Hi. So nobody asked for this, but I want to talk about a show called Green Wing. It was this British television show that was on absolutely 20 years ago. It's about a hospital and it's about the doctors in the hospital. It's really not about patients at all. It's really just about the doctors and it's about their relationships. It's about love. It's about family. It's just about how people relate to each other and I guess what happens when we are dishonest or just lack the capacity to be truthful about who we are and what we want. It's one of my favorite television shows ever produced in all time. I saw it for the first time in the summer that I was off for my first year in college, so that would have been 2010, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I watched it on Hulu with ads for free, and it was fantastic. The love story is one of my favorite love stories of all time. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. Absolutely not. I'm here to talk about the relationship between two of the characters that I think gets the least amount of attention when remembering the show, because the show really is centered around the love story between two doctors, and that's what the climax is leading up to. But for me, the most underrated and yet should be the most appreciated relationship is between that of Dr. Alan Statham and Boyce. Statham is an older man, probably in his 40s, with a mustache, and he is very much that of an insane, childlike, rigid, controlling man who's both very intelligent in book smarts but lacking real world intelligence as far as emotional depth and the ability to build relationships. And Boyce is just sort of like this playful trickster who is very fluid and really enjoys taking the piss and playing with Alan in this way that is like this boyish charm. He knows exactly how to frustrate Alan, and it is perfect. It's perfect. The way that they build their relationship, as far as the writing of the show is concerned, is about how Boyce is exactly this man who pushes the buttons of Alan. And Alan is like weirdly down to clown. Man, he is down to clown. And they slowly build this friendship over these two seasons. There is a point in time where they potentially sleep together, and later on, there is another reference to not only the desire for that to happen again through Boyce, but just how he um is very playful and not only like admires Alan as like a teacher and a smart figure, but also just like as a fucking goofball, man, as a goofball. And I'm gonna spoil the show. Obviously, it's been 20 years. I think we all should have seen it by now. But the end of the show is really heartbreaking, and I found myself crying again when I watch the show and Alan calls Boyce for the last time on the phone, because I guess in the 3 or 4 times that I watched the show I never really realized how weirdly intimate and loving their relationship was. And honestly, it was really, really precious. And I was devastated, honestly, that they were never going to be reunited again. Those characters did not receive a happy ending. And that's fine because not everything has to be resolved in a happy ending. But I would have loved if they had, and I know that there was no way out of the situation that they were in, but I was still rooting for them. Alan is an insane, kind of racist, rigid, but also childlike person whose only desire is to fuck and push the buttons of people around him, both intentionally and unintentionally. And I guess Boyce sees that in him and also recognizes that in himself. And that's really what makes the character dynamic work really well. And I wish that when we talked about that show, those two characters were somebody that we talked about a lot, because I think their relationship reveals a lot about human nature, things that we don't really think about a lot, things that aren't really examined, like the mentor mentee relationship, but the friend relationship and the boundary crossing, and how no matter how much they insult and ridicule and belittle Statham, and how he is so much the butt of the joke and throughout much of the show, he is also really beloved by one, potentially two characters. It's hard to say where uh fuck, am I completely forgetting her name? Joanna. It's hard to say where Joanna, his romantic interest in this show, really stands, because she hates herself so much and it makes her ability to be in relationships with people very taxing. But they have a very destructive and kind love story at the same time. And honestly, I think even though the show is really playful and goofy and surrealist at times, especially when we come to the hospital liaison worker, Sue White, um, it also really does deal with the human aspect so well, so intimately, in this way that I really, really enjoy. Um, it's a 10 out of 10 show. I didn't know until this last year when I finally made my way on Reddit. I had really been avoiding Reddit for all 33 years of my life. But I got on Reddit and I found out that the soundtrack is on Spotify, of all places. Of course, it would be there. And the intro song last week just gets me jammed, gets me pumped up, gets me feeling like my whole day will be better. So I've been listening to it a lot, because sometimes that's the only thing that gets you going, is one really good song. So, yes, I guess I said all that to say I am charmed and delighted by the relationship between Boyce and Alan, and I love that their relationship is what it is, and I love that in a lot of ways, Boyce really was Alan's true friend, whereas everyone else just sort of saw him as a silly buffoon. And he is a silly buffoon. He's one of the best like slapstick comedy dudes, and like the whole show he's super silly, he's always embarrassing himself, and it's really good. It adds to the element of jovial joking and also just the human element that is the show, because like I said, it's not really about being a doctor, but it is about being a human. And I think it's really precious. It's a really precious show. I can't speak more highly of it than saying that it is like, it's absolutely one of my favorite shows of all time, and every time I watch it I'm so invested in it, and I'm rooting for the characters, and I don't want the impact of the bad things that happen and skew the writing to come in, and I'm always like, fuck you person, and hell yeah person, and I'm so happy that this happened, and I'm so devastated that this happened, and wow, it would be really great if this character grew up, and boy doesn't he ever. And I think it takes a lot of work and nuance and like a good relationship between writers to really produce something that you can watch over and over again and still be emotionally invested in. And just like props to the writers of Green Wing and props to the actors of Green Wing. And like the guy who plays Alan Statham, I can't remember his name, but he also played Brian in the show Spaced. That guy is a fantastic actor, and I feel like because he's British, we don't really hear about him enough because I feel like only a few British people have really crossed over into the American sphere and have made themselves famous here. But if they're primarily on British TV, we don't really talk about them unless they're on something like so classically famous as Doctor Who. Um, and I say that as somebody who's never once watched Doctor Who and never plans on watching Doctor Who. But yeah, I just wanted to share with you information about a show you'll probably never watch and a show that I love so much. And stay tuned for more tarot content. I'm working on something as we speak. I'm just taking a break, like just taking a break. Anyways, peace and happy Mercury retrograde.